Welcome to the 10th annual scholarship put on by the Howard Club of Southwest Florida. Thank you so much for coming. We are sure that you're going to enjoy your afternoon with us. We have some dynamic speakers and some great information to share with you about our alma mater, Howard University. I'm Liz Early, and our co-anchor.
I'm Barry Wells, and I'll join my colleague, and I'm just here to keep order. And any of you that know me know that that's not a challenge for me. Anyway, I'd like to add my welcome to that of Liz, and I'd also like to acknowledge our sponsors for today's program, WABC News 7, the Herald Tribune, 957 Beat, Tampa Bay's rhythm and blues and hip-hop station, Tempo News, the news source with the beat of the black community. Now, I know we're all electronically connected this time of the year, and as always, so let's disconnect electronically and turn off our cell phones, iPads, iPhones, and all those other things that we use to keep up with life today. So if you could do that, it will be a lot less disruptive for the program. As Liz said, we've got a great program planned for you today, and we hope that you'll enjoy it. While not an alumnus of Howard University, I did have the honor of teaching at Howard for a number of years, so I've had the Howard experience from a different perspective, and nonetheless, a great one. You know, we've had this program at different venues in the past, and I don't know about you, but I sometimes get a little forgetful. So I showed up at last year's venue this morning, and there was a program going on. It didn't look like anything I should be a part of. So I quickly reconnected with where I was supposed to be. But sometimes, you know, you do forget things. It reminds me of a colleague who was having some memory problems. His wife took him to a memory doctor. And it began to help him quite a bit. And so he was having dinner with some colleagues, with another couple one evening. And he said to his friend, when his wife left the table, the two wives left the table, he said to his friend, I've been doing really well. I went to this memory doctor, and I'm doing much better. The guy said, really? He said, what's the name of the doctor? And he thought for a minute. He said, what's the name of that flower that you give people? It's red, and it has thorns on it? He said, a rose. He said, yes. He turned around and hollered in the kitchen, Rose, what's the name of that doctor he took me to? So I know we all have those challenges of remembering things sometimes, but you got to find those little tricks, you know, to make you remember things. But do enjoy things. And Liz, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and we'll move along. Thank you all for coming.
Okay. I'm going to introduce to you the president of the Howard Club of Southwest Florida, Clarence Rogers.
They should have handicap rails on this thing for an old man like me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to say good morning and thank you for coming to celebrate our 10th anniversary with us. As I look out here, it's just such a beautiful thing to see all of the ladies and gentlemen and the kids and all dressed up and ready to celebrate our 10th. The Howard Club got started by a group of Howard grads who got together here in Sarasota and decided to have a party. And if you know anything about Howard, that's what Howard is known for, having parties. So that's how this club got started. At the party, it was decided that it might be a good thing to get all of those other folks who weren't at the party involved, and that's what it is. That's how it started. Dr. Webb and Ms. Ellerby and Dr. Stevens. I won't try to name all of the founders, but we will ask them to stand later. And it's grown all the way from that party to this. And so I think we deserve to thank those founders of the Howard Club. So let's give them a hand. Now, you may notice that it's called the Howard Club of Southwest Florida and not the Howard Alumni Club. And there's a reason for that, because to become a member of this organization, you don't have to have a degree from Howard, nor do you have to have gone to Howard and flunked out to be a member of this organization. You merely have to believe, as we do, that it's not the number of degrees you have, but the number of people you help get degrees. And that's why we've worked so hard, and that's why we worked especially hard this year. And for our 10th, we have the privilege and honor of having two American icons to celebrate with us, the one and only Don King and the one and only Reverend Al Sharpton, who is in the area but having a few difficulties. But don't worry, he's here, because there were some who just doubted that we could even get him to come. But he's here. He'll be here in a few minutes. While I'm talking about membership to the organization, I encourage you to, there should be cards on your tables. I encourage you to fill out those cards, and if you're not a member, become a member. If you don't want to join, fill out the cards, attach a check, and make a contribution. So in some way, we want you to participate. Again, I say welcome and enjoy the luncheon.
As is our tradition, would you please stand and let's sing Lift Every Voice and Sing. The words are in your program for those of you who have memory issues. It's on the next to the last page.
Firstly, I want to say it's an honor to be here. I haven't been able to attend since high school, my first time ever being here before I went to Howard. Wow. It's difficult to describe my Howard experience because has so much to do with who I am as a person. I feel like anything I say is going to be incredibly general. But I think of family, and I think of course, college being self-discovery. To be in a place, I came from Sarasota where, there aren't many black folk around. That's a nice way to say it, right? And I went to Howard where all of us looked alike. And I mean, that experience alone, just seeing different variety of us. We believe different things. We look different ways. We're from completely different places. I met people from places where I never thought there were any black people at all, only to learn that we're everywhere. And we come from every walk of life. I mean, on top of that, discovering who I am as an artist in my building in the Department of Fine Arts, the Division of Fine Arts, Department of Theater Arts, my family. I lived in that building. I slept in that building. I ate or did not eat in that building. And I don't know, I miss it so much. There's such a family. I mean, even in this room, there's such a feeling of family and familiarity and love at Howard. And each professor you have is pushing you to be your best self, even sometimes to the point of your own frustration, just pushing you to be the greatest version of you possible. And they pulled things out of me that I never thought were there. I'm still discovering and evolving into something I'm sure they saw my first day there. It's such a credit to the passion of Howard professors. For all of us that went to Howard, there's some folk there that have been there since the 60s. Some of them went there, they came back. They're teaching there, they're in some capacity at Howard. They don't want to leave. So, I mean, it's this constant thing of wanting to be attached to that Howard love. I would give anything just to go visit now. I'm in a show, I can't, but I just want to say once again to the Howard Club, thank you for providing me that opportunity that may not have been afforded to me if you guys hadn't stepped in and been so incredibly generous and loving. And thank you to Howard for helping me discover me. Howard will always have my heart. I don't care where I go. I will always have a heart for Howard. So thank you so much. God bless you.
Hello, everyone. I'm an educator here in Sarasota. And as an educator, I like to think I'm pretty good at my job. And but there's still, those kids, throw me through a loop every once in a while. But there are some things that I know for sure as an educator. And one thing I do know for sure, or two things I do know for sure, that Howard, for me, was the best possible decision ever. And as Nyari just said, at Howard is where you are loved, you are challenged, you are redirected, you are embraced. I just left last weekend with my line sisters, 30 years, and we still get together as often as possible. And we just spent the weekend together celebrating 30 years, and I know it is because of Howard that I met those wonderful, wonderful women. Also, as an educator, what I know for sure is that it takes a village to raise a child. Your presence here allows us to do for Nyari what we're doing for a student right now. But also, as an educator, I like to push those students, or my students, and the students that come in contact with as much as I can. And I really try to push them to make Howard their home. At this time, I'd like for all the students who are guests of us today to please stand. Now, I'm a little biased. I said I'm an educator here in Sarasota, and I think we have wonderful schools, but I'm a booker. I'm a booker babe. So I think they're the best, and that's a wonderful representation right there. But also I want to direct your attention to page 18 in your program. And right now at Howard, we have Siki Kote, who is there, and she is there with the help of the Howard Club of Southwest Florida and with your help. And you can see she wrote a little note to keep us updated. But I want to point you to by her last paragraph. And she says, I've only been a Bison for a year, and every day my experience gets better and better. I can't wait for the next couple of years I spend at the Mecca. Howard is my home, and the teachers and the students are my family. And I think that is truly evident by what we've just experienced and what we've just heard and what we see right here. So again, on behalf of the Howard Club of Southwest Florida, thank you for supporting the students.
I just wanted to say that Siki obviously couldn't be here to receive her award, but we do have members of her family. I think her grandmother, her aunt. Are you here yet? Okay. All right. They're on their way, I'm sure. We will now have the invocation. Reverend Sheila Bradshaw.
Good morning. Praise the Lord, everyone. Let us bow our heads as we invoke the presence of the Lord. Father, how grateful we are for your goodness, your mercy, your grace, your faithfulness, and your loving kindness. We exalt you and magnify your name. We decree you as Lord over our luncheon and ask you to bless us and all of our presenters. We thank you once again for this opportunity to celebrate the outstanding accomplishments of our honorees and to award scholarships to students for their notable achievements. We give you thanks for the Howard Club of Southwest Florida and ask you to supernaturally bless its officers, members, friends, donors, and every one of us, exceeding abundantly above all that we can ask or think, with your knowledge of treasures, of hidden riches in secret places, that we may know that you are truly Lord over all things and that all things are possible through you, that there is nothing that is too hard for you. And so we are thanking you in advance for opening doors to provide abundant human, financial, and material resources that millions of dollars will be available to meet our students' needs. We thank you for each scholarship recipient and ask that you establish their thoughts and order their steps. Increase them, as you did with Daniel, in all wisdom, skill, and learning. Give them understanding in all things. Strengthen them and make their way perfect. May they stand before rulers of nations as a result of their diligence, excellence, and wisdom that comes only through you. And may they always look to you with thanksgiving as their source. For eye has not seen, nor have ear heard, the things that you have in store for them. Let them know and understand that you are sovereign and that events in their lives are choreographed, syncopated, and orchestrated by you in your divine movements, for all things working together for their good. We thank you that they will make awesome contributions to humanity and that historians will write about them. Now, Father, we ask that you bless our food, sanctify it, make it holy, take all sickness and disease from the midst of it, and that we digest it and assimilate it properly. It is in the mighty and majestic name of Jesus the Christ we pray. Amen and amen.
Now, I'm going to take a moment. People have talked today about the social side of Howard University. And I'll tell you, the spirit of Howard, once you have been there, will never leave you. But there's also a very, very serious side of the university. Many of you probably know that Howard was founded in 1867 and chartered by the U.S. Congress. But its inception began in the basement of the first Congregational Society after the Civil War and the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Howard then embarked on its journey to serve as a platform for the completion of the agenda of freedom for all Americans. It also engaged in negotiating, in responding to and debating the most salient and highly complex, volatile, and social issues of the nation. Still on the cutting edge of education, Howard has developed, motivated, and trained innumerable African American scholars, artists, scientists, architects, engineers, physicians, dentists, lawyers, activists, teachers, and public service officials who have provided overwhelming evidence that the dream of Howard University has come true. Currently, Howard enrolls approximately 10,000 students, 7,000 undergraduates, and 3,000 graduate students. We have 13 schools and colleges and offer degrees in 120 different areas. Howard has a number of illustrious graduates, and I'll name just a few of them. And then as the program goes on, I'm going to tell you a few things about Howard University, but I want you to guess which university these things happen to. For example, what university produces more doctoral graduates in computer science than any other university in the nation? More minority doctorate candidates. Can you guess? Howard University, you got it. You know, you're a smart audience. You know, there's a famous black female writer. Her name is Toni Morrison. Can you guess where she went to school? Oh, I'm so impressed with you. Okay. The College of Medicine at Howard has been recognized for training more minority physicians to serve the underserved in this country. I could go on and on and on about the accolades of Howard University, but I would ask you to look in your journal. There is a history of Howard there. And as I come up to the podium, from time to time, I'm going to let you have some more guesses about some famous people. Okay? Right now, I would introduce to you the mayor of Sarasota, Florida, Mayor Willie Shaw.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Howard Club. To all of you very, very beautiful people, thank you for being here. To our honorees and our speaker, Reverend Sharpton and Mr. King, if I may, on behalf of the city of Sarasota, if you gentlemen would come forward. Yeah. I don't think that the city has at any point in time had two more controversial persons I can do that. I won. I am most happy and honored on behalf of the citizens of the city of Sarasota from its youngest, born at 117 this morning at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, to its oldest at 107. I want to thank you for making Sarasota, your presence in Sarasota rather, today. I thank you, and it is with great passion and pleasure that I present you the keys to the city. These keys presented are not only to the city of Sarasota, but to the very depths of the hearts of those who the little sister said were so few in number. But my family has been here over 110 years, so I want you to know from the very depths of our heart, these keys are presented. And I wish you both well in your days yet to come. God bless you.
Thank you. Let's give them a rotation, please. We'll be talking about something new.
A second ago, I was helping Don King down the steps and turned around and said, now who's going to help me up? Every year, the Howard Club makes a special award to someone who has been concerned about the destiny of others and someone who follows through with action, not just words. This year, it is my pleasure to present the Presidential Award to a person who is known around the world, Don King, the greatest boxing promoter of all times. Except for Dr. Tim Stevens over there, who went to John Adams High School with Don, I doubt there's anybody in this room who knows Don better than George Forbes and I. And George didn't go to Howard. So you have to sit down there. Now, I'm not going to talk about all the things on Don's resume, because if you want to know all the things, or even some of the things on his resume, you can go ahead and Google him. But what I want to talk about is things that I personally know about Don. I first met Don shortly after he was released from the penitentiary. That's another way of saying I didn't know him when he was convicted. But I've had the privilege of being with him right from the beginning of his promoting career, and I was there because Forest City Hospital, the black hospital in Cleveland, on the front page of the Plain Dealer, it was announced that Forest City Hospital had closed its doors. And Don had met with me and George and said that Muhammad Ali wanted to do something for Don. And we tried to figure out what it was. And Don immediately and unselfishly decided that whatever Muhammad Ali wanted to do for him should be done to help Forest City Hospital. And with that, Don promoted in 1972 in Cleveland at the Cleveland Arena the largest exhibition, and I think that record still stands today in the Guinness Book of Records, the largest exhibition fight in the history of boxing. And Muhammad Ali, of course, was the headliner of that fight. Now, he fought the sheriff and the disc jockeys and stuff like that. But he also fought a fighter from Texas, a true boxer. But nonetheless, the whole purpose was to raise money for the hospital. And while the money that was raised that evening wasn't sufficient to keep the hospital open, it certainly kept its doors open longer than they would have been had Don and Muhammad Ali not done that. Now, I'm not a cardiologist, but I do know the man's heart. And I know the things that he has done from his heart. And I have personal knowledge of the many things that, and the many people who have benefited from Don's generosity. And whether, George, if you remember all the annual turkey drives, I mean, Don would give truckloads of turkeys, not only in Cleveland, but around the country to those who were in need around the holidays. And he's a humanitarian. And he's a dichotomy, because Don is a fierce negotiator and businessman. But at the same time, he has a heart. Most businessmen have their lawyers do the negotiating and then have the lawyers bring the papers for them to sign. Well, Don did it the other way. Don did his own negotiating and then just had the lawyers put the legal terms to it. And the point I'm making is that you wouldn't think that someone who was that strong a business person with a business mind would be as generous as he has to the many family and children who have benefited. There was a Don King Foundation that just gave untold numbers of dollars to those in need. While I was at Howard, I'm personally aware of 2 dentists and one physician who could not have gone to Howard but for the generosity of Don King. You have to understand, at that time, Don was a numbers man. And the numbers men in the community, no, that's serious. You young folks are laughing, but those of us who got hair like mine, no. The numbers men in the community were the bankers. They were the ones who took care of the black community. And Don was one of the leaders in Cleveland in terms of taking care of people. And like I said, I personally know, and there may have been more, but I know of 2 dentists and 1 physician who benefited from Don's generosity. I remember when we were in Kinshasa, Zaire, for the Rumble in the Jungle, and Don had put on a musical concert. And he became aware that there were many people there who could not afford to go to that concert. And they were just outside, and most of them were young folks and kids. And Don imposed upon President Mobutu Sese Seko to have him let those kids into the concert free, just so they could participate and have the ability to see something that they otherwise would not have seen. And like I said, I've known Don since 1972. I've been all over the world with or for Don, and I could go on with reasons he should receive this award, but I won't, because my presentation is not a speech, it's a presentation. Just like his acceptance is not a speech, it's an acceptance. Ladies, see, I can say that because I love him. You can tell that. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the recipient of the 2015 Presidential Award, the one and only, the inimitable, Don King.
Thank you very much, Clarence Rogers, for that inimitable, warm, educational background on Don King. It is a pleasure for me to be in Sarasota, but more so for the kids, because when Clarence called me to give me this recognition, I am humbly grateful and deeply appreciative. But what sold it was the kids and the education, that we have to have, because they are tomorrow's guardians of our liberties. And they must be educated in the science of a Republican government. And so doing, before I do move into my little chat that he says, it's going to be not a speech, but it's just going to be informative about me in the same manner that he presented me. I want to pay a great deal of thanks to Mayor Charles Shaw and the 107 years of being here in Florida, his family, and I'm deeply appreciative, as I know my colleagues, like my son and Reverend Al Sharpton, because we have been together over 40 years, 4 decades, between 4 and 5 decades. And I humbly grateful for the key to the city. I used to say that Martin Luther King took us to the mountaintop and showed us the promised land and said he may not get there with us, but we would get to that promised land. Well, I always would retort that I would like to take us to the bank. He'd take us to the promised land. I want to take them to the bank so that they'd be able to get the land that they need and the feelings of what it is. I've been defiant of the system here ever since I began to promote and even run the numbers and whatever I had to do. And the system has an uncanny way of making right wrong and wrong right. This is what you must understand, that the message that I want to give today is this. This is country that boasts the self-evident truth of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The self-evident truth that says we are given by God the unalienable, which turn into the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We boast that, but we live and practice the self-evident lie. And so in building that, you got to say, keep hope alive. This is the greatest nation in the world, and when you love something as a mother and a father loves their children, you have to chastise them or criticize them or to grow in unity and solidarity and togetherness to bring about change. Well, we are a nation that is founded and grounded in the essence of liberty and freedom. Yet, people of this great country has been denied, and that has been the woman and people of color. Now, when I say the woman, I want to edify that, the white woman, because in this country, they were considered in slavery. The women and the slaves they were denied their rights. And in being denied their rights, they were inferior, that's what they used the word, and they constituted property. The common denominator between the white woman and the slave is that they both were considered property. She was considered an instrument of affection or entertainment, and the slaves didn't have no rights. That's woman and man. That's why you have to be able to make the distinction. All right, so now in so doing, they carved out a nation where black life was worthless, you know what I mean? And so you have to be able to deal with a thing there, but at the same time it goes around because the woman from her loins sprang nation time. And for you to give birth to those who would be the leaders, and then they get to be of age, and then they reduce their mothers, their sisters, their brothers, whoever to whatever dynasty or whatever reign that they have, and make her subject to being submissive, you know what I mean, and playing the game. All right, so now in taking on this mantle, what I want to say succinctly is this. We treat the effects, but we don't treat the cause. You know what I mean? If a doctor, and there's many doctors in here, and I heard them speak, and he says a doctor has to search out and correct the cause of a disease, how did it come about, what it is, in order to be able to arrest it, and then find ways and means to resolve it. All right, we have come a long way. In 1849, they hit us on the head 200 blows a day. In 2015, they hit us 48. We didn't save a lot of blows. Things are getting better. You know? What you have to understand is this, is that in working in the women and the people of color, now that the women both being able to vote black and white alike, is so vitally important that you understand what we are up against. Now, the cause is this way of thinking that they have carved out by propaganda, and they used it. They was given white indentured servants, they were slaves, black ones were slaves, but the black became identifiable by color. And when they added color to it, then they would be able to keep inuring everything to that, you know, to make it where they wouldn't lose their chattel, their property. We were property. So therefore, the way you look at it, you got to go back and get that for black and white alike. And working for women's rights and working for people of color's rights, which are both still denied to this day, the residents of slavery still exist, and that the women are fighting black and white alike to get recognition as a human being and to be able to say they were born by the Creator, created by the Creator, and that there should be equal treatment. That's not so, as you can see today. And as far as we of color is concerned, dividing is what they're trying to make things happen. A divided army is more powerful than any unified army, you know what I mean, for the divisiveness of whatever you're trying to do. So in my life, I have been fighting for the day that all people are clothed in dignity, but you got to be able to recognize that you must go to the cause to change it rather than to deal with the results of what we're having and how we do. Before I go further, I want to read something to you because I want it to come from a white person, not from me, you know. So this is the power. This is by George Washington. The power under the Constitution will always be in the people. It is entrusted for certain defined purposes and for the certain limited period of time to the representatives of their own choosing, and whenever it is executed contrary to their interests or not agreeable to their wishes, their servants can and undoubtedly will be recalled. That is very profound because the representatives, the politicians that we send to Washington to represent us for the wrongs and the deeds of things that are being caused for activists and to find people like the voice in the wilderness like Reverend Sharpton, you know, they become a part of the very problem that you sent them there to resolve. All right? So next thing, I'm going to give you one more thing out of him, then I can talk for myself. You love the country, you have to fight for it. And I think this is the greatest country in the world. Again, a quote, this is from the founding fathers of the nation. And this is what's so vitally important that Clarence didn't have to convince me, just had to grab me and bring me here to Sarasota, the beautiful sunny South. He says, a primary object should be the education of our youth in the science of government. In a republic, what queries of knowledge can be equally important? And what duty more pressing than communicating it to those who are to be the future guardians of the liberties of the country? Again, George Washington. Now you got to understand when you say what these kids got to be treated, because edited and things that are taught, they don't teach. The teaching has to be for the people of our country and to those who will be our future leaders. Inclusiveness, that is vitally important. And the woman, the black woman especially, because she had to endure all type of hardships and barbaric treatment because she was property. And you could do whatever you want, the master with his property. The white woman had a little bit better, but under the same facetiousness of being intimidated with fear and being manipulated, you know, with the magic use of words. I love you. You know what I mean? So it all boils down to the same. So what I'm saying is that we should all unite and go for the cause, and that we should make certain that when you're teaching, that you teach about the government, how it's founded, where it comes from, what it is, and then you can be able to deal with the change that is so vitally necessary. The people in this country, black and white alike, are great. The miracle of the ages is the election of a black president. Why? Because blacks in this country are stereotyped, and their images is we are lazy, lethargic, we can't rise to the occasion, we are all lie, cheat, and steal, we are heathens and savages. And so any one of these interpretations is a knee-jerk word to a population of whites who have been deeply psychic in their psyche of the inferiority, and that they use this divisive technique to say one is better than the other, and all the blames and things that happen to white people that's sorrowful, the blacks caused it. If they didn't do that, they wouldn't be sick, they wouldn't be poor, they wouldn't have poverty, because we take their jobs, we do this here. And free labor had its damaging against labor. But the idea is they have done a magnificent job, and I come from the school, wherever you do good, if it's doing good, doing bad. I heard an expression, I think last night, that had Charlie Carr, one of George's friends, and I, who said his wife was said, Charlie will always find a right way to do wrong. You know what I mean? So I had to pick that one up, because you have to understand that to be able to deal, women comprise 50% or more of this population. And you got to understand also that you just take an objective step backwards and look at the reality of the situation. That this is facetious of how they have governed both black and white alike, is that in 1870 they gave the slave the right to vote. They didn't give the white woman the right to vote till 1920. Now this is something that where she's been educated in the household of those who are the leaders, but they played on that, you know, because they could do what they want to property. They could do what they want to the people of color, whatever, without any compunction or remorse. And you find that's now being done as we are sitting here today. And this is a great turnout with some wonderful people. So I want you just to say with these kids that they're here, and I'm so very humble and proud that they are here, but to dedicate our time to really educating them of the science of government, and to be able to bring that black history to the fore, and you will find out the contributions of people of color throughout this nation, and you will find out that this is the cosmic words of this nation: one land, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Not all white, not all black, not all brown or yellow, for all. And so when you deal with that, you can understand what Abraham Lincoln said in Gettysburg Address about those who have paid the same supreme price, but they left a work for us to do that is undone. It is incumbent upon us to do. So that means we got to save America and let America rise up to meet that challenge, that creed that is so gallantly and so it fought and died to make happen. You know what I mean? That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal and endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, if we do that, we will find it. So now as the move on to be designed, I want to say this because as we speak, they are now trying to make Israel and the Jews back to be divided. Now, as you know, the only people in this country that were slaves were the Jews and the people of color, the African Americans. All right, now, the difference between that slavery is that they left the Jewish community together. They left the folklore, the history. The rabbis could tell the stories of Abraham and Joshua and Zechariah. You know, they could talk about all of the things that was there and fighting for their freedom, being educated and re-educated. But with the black community, most barbaric and most horrific type of slavery that ever existed on the planet Earth, you were stripped of the family unit. You were stripped of any education. You were stripped of your name, where you come from, how you was. In the making of a slave, in order to make your allegiance to the master, we were taught to be nothing but loyal to him while being subverted to not knowing that you're only destroying yourself. And this is what we find ourselves in that position to do. Now again, this is nothing that's new. This is something that's been going on right now, and as we've seen signs right outside of this hotel that they are saying that Sharpton and Obama, they are against the Jews. They are against and try every way you can do to see what they can do and to be recognized as such that start the lie and then let the lie go on and grow into progressive truth, and it becomes a reality. That's not certain. I am an ambassador of Israel. I was appointed by Shimon Peres, the president, and Yuri Severe. He was the ambassador. He's the man who made the first thing of peace, the book 1,000 Days, and then he came back with Oslo Agreement. All right, now, when this happens, I want you to know that Shimon Peres is one of the most visionary men I've ever met in my life. Here's a man that had the very thing that there was all down a divide, that is the Palestinians and the Jews as kids playing together, working together, growing together, and being able to tell them that old God that they say that is that's thousands of years of hatred and things was there. He said it isn't so. You are taught that, and so therefore I was very impressed with him, and so I spoke before the leaders of the world, and then he got me to come and be an ambassador of peace because I walk on both sides of the aisle. You know what I mean? So I've defied the system also, so therefore we had something in common that we could be able to deal with for humanity. Michael Jackson told me music is the ribbon that ties humanity together. I added to that boxing is the sport that brings humanity together to be tied. So we got to be able to deal with what is real, you know what I mean? And so I want to say that it's been great to be here, and it's great for us to go on. And the young man I'm about to introduce to you now is like the John the Baptist, you know what I mean, the voice crying in the wilderness. I watched this young man as he grew. He was dedicated and committed. He had the intestinal fortitude to be able to dare to be great in the love of his community. And so he would go around and paint red paint on the dope houses, what the dope dealers were being to sell our kids, to cause the confusion and to take away from their motivation, inspiration to be what they could be by getting high and not knowing what it is and fighting each other rather than being able to grasp this opportunity to do. And this young man, I've watched him for decades as he has grew in people power, people love, unity for the community, and being able to make these things happen. And I want you to know that his truest stalwart and his farthest thing from his mind is hatred. That's what he's fighting. He's trying to make things be understood that you would not take the time to understand, of what no leader would be fearful for his own life, it would not be able to go out and speak on. So it's a thing here that you have to deal with what is real. And so I want you to meet and greet the voice of our community now, a young man with God's blessing that he's still here, because as Clarence alluded to my life, everything I'm seeing, I done lived it. I done been bombed, I done been shot, my house blowed up, you know what I mean, and put in penitentiary for standing your ground, which you hear them all say, for Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman and the rest of them, that they have these acts are isolated incidents. No, they are the elongation of what was already done and set in stone. That's why let's go cure, the systematic evil that permits us these type of evil acts to take place, white and black alike, because you got Viola Luiso, the ones, all of these that were the priests, all these were whites fighting for what was right. So let me bring up this man here who continues the bloodstained battle, the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality, and to be able to deal with the people that is in this room and throughout the world that are crying for freedom and want to understand, give the women their rights and give the people of color their rights, and let us come together and make America better and make America what she should be. And the man that's going to help to make that happen is the young man I'm going to introduce you now, Reverend Al Sharpton. Come on up here, Reverend. I love him. I love him. I love this man, and he's going to continue to carry the bloodstained banner. God bless you.
Thank you very much to my friend and brother, Attorney Clarence Rogers, and to one of the outstanding, he was mentioned, but you need to know, one of the outstanding statesmen and political leaders this nation has ever known, Attorney George Forbes. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the key to the city, and to all of the distinguished guests. I also must acknowledge my little sister, Debbie King. This is Don's daughter, Debbie. And the chairman of the board of National Action Network and senior pastor of Grace Baptist Church in Westchester, Reverend Dr. W. Franklin Richardson. When Clarence had said to me that he had wanted me to come for this occasion and said that it was scholarships to young people, I've known Clarence down through the years, and I said, that's good, but Saturday mornings, National Action Network and I, no matter where I am in the world, I'm in Harlem on Saturdays doing our Saturday rally. One of the traditions that I learned from the King movement is meet weekly so that you stay mobilized. And we do it on the air on Saturday, so I rarely miss a Saturday. We've been doing it now 24 years, and I don't think I've missed 20 in those 24 years. And then when he said that it was Howard, in the Howard Club, and knowing the history of Howard University, and I've done the convocation the last couple of years, that appealed to me. And then, of course, that it was around scholarship for these great young people. But when he also said that he was going to honor Don King, if there was one person that I wanted to be there for, it was Don King. And I will tell you why. It is a message, the interjection of King and the young people is the reason I wanted to be here. Because when I was a young man and struggling in Brownsville section of Brooklyn to build a youth group, there was a man that became like a father to me. My father left when I was very young, when I was 9. He was an entrepreneur, owned about 20 buildings in Brooklyn, and I was on my way to be a nice, solid, middle-class Negro. But my father left. And I woke up, and my mother ended up a domestic worker and raised me in the hardcore ghetto of Brooklyn. I met a man that his son joined my youth group, and he became like the father that had left. His son got killed. And you would know that man as the godfather sold James Brown. James Brown in 1974 introduced me to a singer, one of his contemporaries named Lloyd Price. And Lloyd Price said there's a man who has a vision of doing a fight in Africa. And the fight would be against a young gladiator who was the heavyweight champion of the world, George Foreman, against the aging but wrongly dethroned ex-champion, Muhammad Ali. And this man has the vision to bring this together under the skies of Africa. And he wants to do a musical concert before the fight. And he feels that the one that could headline that and they would know all over Africa is you, Mr. Brown. And I'm sitting there in the room. I was about 18 or 19 years old. And he said, and he'll pay you At that time, I think it was $100,000. James Brown said, no black man can pay me $100,000. And he said, this man can. And we met Don King. And Don King pulled that fight off and did pay James Brown his $100,000. But after that, he went from one mountain to another. But what impressed me about him is that you do not judge a man by how high he stands. You judge a man by how grounded his feet is. If I were to take your height today, I don't measure you from mid-height to your crown. I measure you from where you stand. And the problem that we've had in black America is we've seen many people up high, but if you look behind the curtain, their feet never hit the ground. And many of us fall because there's a giants that we see and there are giants that really stand. Problem that we get is that we look at too many midgets standing on ladders. They appear tall. But they're not standing on anything. This man is a giant from the ground to where his height has brought him into legendary and iconic levels. I've been with him all over the world, from Jamaica to Africa to Europe. I've seen him argue with the captains of industry. I've seen him sit across conference tables in Las Vegas. I've walked with him up the steps of the federal courthouse where they wanted to lock both of us up. So when I say that he's a man that has earned our respect and earned our regard, I say it because I've been there with him and seen it for 40 years. Give another hand to the awardee. Let me say, the young people need to understand this part. One of the reasons, I'm on MSNBC every night now, and one of the reasons that I thought I could do that, and I want these youth to understand, you are going to be whatever in life you can conceive of. If you can't conceive of it, you will never achieve it. You can't become what you think is beyond your reach. I do my show live every night from 30 Rockefeller Center. 30 Rockefeller Center is known throughout the world as the media capital. It is where NBC started. It is where the famous dog and the whole horn of the imprimatur of American broadcasting. You would think that someone from a broken home, domestic, mother, son, I'm a college dropout, it would be unimaginable to walk in 30 Rock. I have an office there, though I keep my office at National Action Network. The reason I can conceive it is because when I was that teenager meeting Don King had the penthouse in 30 Rockefeller Center. I went to 30 Rockefeller Center in 19, and I went to see Don King at Don King Productions. And they said, no, you got to go around to the 67th floor elevators and go to the penthouse. Black woman named Connie Harper brought me into his office. It changed my mind about what was possible. I didn't have a pristine, clean, pedigreed family. If he could come from the streets and sit in the penthouse at Rockefeller Center and trade sports all over the world, then it became possible to me that I can go in 30 Rockefeller Center and speak for our people every night. So Debbie, every evening that I walk into 30 Rock to head to my office is a tribute to The Changing of My Mind by Don King. If you change your mind, you can change your future. Your mind determines where your behind is going to end up. Now let me go back to something that Clarence and Mr. King raised. Part of our story is omitted. 3 weeks ago, I was in Selma, Alabama. 3 weeks to the day, President Obama chose 21 of us that marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with him, the bridge where 50 years ago, 3 Saturdays ago exactly, John Lewis and Hosea Williams was beaten on that bridge for fighting for the right to vote. 50 years ago, Viola Luisa, who Mr. King referred to, was killed for coming and joining that march, a white woman from Detroit. National Action Network and Dr. Richardson's honoring her, and her daughter will be with us at our convention in 2 weeks. As I walked across that bridge, I thought about how the part that is left out is that when we got the right to vote, and they're chipping away at it now, there was a direct line from 1865 to 1965. The Emancipation Proclamation to the right to vote and the protection of the right to vote. The part we leave out is after the Emancipation Proclamation, when Lincoln signed it and the slaves became statutorily free. The way they re-enslaved us was economically. What they did was they began using the criminal justice system that for minor offenses, vagrancy, even if you weren't vagrant, just hanging out in the street, oh, you're a vagrant, bring you to court and charge you a fine or a bail that you couldn't afford. And they used the fact that we had no economic underpinnings to therefore make you indentured servants, and you had to work off your fine, your penalty, by going back into servitude, in some cases for the masters that just freed you. So to have political freedom without economic freedom will only mean that they will enslave you by another name. The reason this country, those that represent the days of yesterday, will glorify some and demonize others, will glorify some corporate executives but demonize a Don King, is because if we ever pursue economic heroes, then we become completely free. It is permitted to become one with a big title in somebody else's business. It was not permitted to do what he did, to build your own business and be in charge of an industry. That is to break the indentured slave cycle. So we celebrate what Lincoln did, but we wipe out what re-enslaved us. So what King did by taking boxing, it was amazing to me. They said, oh Lord, we can't have Don King in charge of boxing. Don King used to run numbers, he's a gangster, and gonna take boxing from the gangsters. Can you imagine that? We got to stop a number runner from taking boxing from the gangsters. And y'all call that progressive. And got black boxers talking about, I can't work with him, I got to be with the boys. The boys is what we trying to get away from. The economic self-sufficiency independence is the cycle that we had to break. Now, let's be honest in this room. Part of the problem is that not only had we had to fight racism from the outside, but classism from the inside. Some blacks that felt they were of a different class too educated, too refined, that you were above the other blacks. They were street blacks, that they were not accultured. I debated a self-described black conservative not long ago, and he said to me, Reverend Mal, I ain't into all of this marching and protesting you do. Civil rights didn't make me. Look at my resume. I went to the right schools. I have the right pedigree. I have the right degree. Read my resume. Civil rights didn't write my resume. I took it, I looked at it, I said, yes, very impressive, you're right. You went to the right school, you had the right pedigree, you got the right awards. Civil rights didn't write your resume, but civil rights made somebody read your resume. You ain't the first smart Negro in America. Don't you ever forget that some unlettered, uneducated, non-degree grandmamas laid down in front of biting dogs in Birmingham and Selma so you could go to the school you went to. Don't you ever forget that it wasn't long ago we couldn't meet in a ballroom and have a dinner for a black college in Florida. Why do you have people that are controversial here? Because it was controversial people that sponsored you getting here. It was not the accepted and the refined that broke down the walls of segregation. It was those that took the risks, that were called the bad names, whose children had to read ugly headlines on them, but that made a way for you to come through and become what you become. And all of us shouldn't have to go through what he went through, or even what I went through. But even if you're not going to go through it, even if you're not going to be involved, at least don't be ungrateful. After the Emancipation Proclamation, and they formed in the Congregational, as she so eloquently said, and formed Howard University. Formed it because they first wanted to educate blacks in theology, and then it expanded into more areas of education. And they named it after General Otis Howard. And General Otis Howard not only had been a hero in fighting in the Civil War, he headed the Freedmen's Bureau. Howard came from the loins of freedom fighters. There's nothing more incongruous than a Howard graduate that does not believe in fighting freedom. So here we are today, 2015, where the voting rights is under attack. The Supreme Court took out Section 4, which takes out preconditions and takes out the map. Why is that important? It's important because the Voting Rights Act didn't give you the right to vote. We got the right to vote in the amendments and added to the Constitution after the Civil War. What the voting rights did is protect you from places that was historically discriminatory. And the Voting Rights Act said that those that are historically discriminatory in the South and in the North, they had 2 districts in New York, they cannot change the law without pre-clearance from the Justice Department. Is that right, Attorney Forbes? What did that mean? That means they could not stop early voting without pre-clearing it. They could not stop Sunday go to the polls without pre-clearing it. They could not change vote ID without pre-clearing it. When they took that out, that's when they stopped souls to the polls in Florida. That's when they cut down early voting days in Ohio, because they no longer have to pre-clear it. The problem is that 50 years ago, people that didn't have the resources or the ability that we have today got us the Voting Rights Act. 50 years ago, with all our polish, we have not stood up to protect the Voting Rights Act, and they've taken it piece by piece. Yes, Don King is right. On the surface, we see a Trayvon. On the surface, we see Ferguson. But inside is the same economic and political disenfranchisement, the core problem. So they will run us around to put the fires out, but if we never go inside the inferno inside and change the inequality that is structured, we'll be running from one incident to the other. So that is why they must make right look wrong and wrong look right. Porter asked me this morning, you think Don King is a great America? I said, in the language of double standards, if you're white and you make business work and you build something that is insurmountable, you are savvy. If you're black and do it, you're a hustler. Donald Trump's name all over the world, he's savvy. Don King, slick. It is amazing how the adjectives we get. Preacher comes down to Sarasota for Clarence Rogers, that is conservative, does what he's told, and speaks well of those in the system. He would be the influential Reverend so-and-so. I ran for president, almost came mayor of New York. I'm very close to the sitting president, but they say the controversial Reverend Al Sharpton. Well, why I'm not the influential Reverend Al Sharpton? But again, quoting King, because I learned this young from him, that you have to be careful, young folks, who your appraiser is. He thought I forgot that lesson. If you go to the wrong appraiser will tell you something of value is worthless, and something that's worthless is of value. We have the Diamond District in New York. The appraiser and the jeweler, if they in cahoots together, you'll be buying some bad stuff. And that's what's wrong. We have the appraisers tell us who's controversial. And the appraisers tell us who's influential. You must ask the question, young people, all the time. Controversial to who? And influential about what? And then what are you using your influence for? Who cares what influence you have if you don't use it for anybody? I remember when we were fighting in the Supreme Court to save affirmative action, Reverend Joseph Lowry, the revered president emeritus of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, said that the only way we're going to save it is we've got to stop this from going in front of the Supreme Court. We don't have the votes. Say, how are we going to settle it? Say, well, why don't we just give them the money to hold the plaintiff down? Say, well, we're going to need several $100,000. Every corporate executive that we call couldn't do it. They can go to all the events. They can go to where they buy tables for them to make the company look good, but they could not authorize that. I meet so many. I'm the vice president of irrelevance. I'm the senior advisor of nothing. We got on the phone and called Don King. And Don King wrote a check for almost $1 million that saved affirmative action. My point to these young people is don't get tricked by wrong appraisers. And don't let people delude you. One, put in your own mind what you want to achieve and choose models and examples that will make you go beyond what is apparent to you. Shoot for higher than was easy. Make your brain have to stretch. Exercise your most difficult limb. And don't be part of the crowd. Stretch out there and lead the crowd. But also know that the struggle continues. Voting rights today. Dealing with the criminal justice system today. Dealing with things from stand your ground all the way to the questions of economic opportunity is still alive today. Yes, we've made a lot of progress. Yes, we've come a long way, but we still have a way to go. And don't stop until we build a nation that has equal protection under the law as well as equal opportunity. You don't stop when you do better. You stop when you arrive. It is an incomplete journey if we get to the 21st century and we're allowed to be stopped from full equality. And Trayvon and Ferguson and I Can't Breathe, Eric Gardner, and I was out front in all of them, they are only flashpoints of a deeper problem that we must continue to fight. The other admonition I'd give you is don't judge it on race. Judge it on right and wrong. Everybody that is black is not right, and everybody white ain't wrong. All my skin folk ain't my kinfolk. Everybody my color ain't my kind. Don't ever forget there was some whites that went and died to fight for us, while some blacks was cross town saying, I don't know why they marching and why don't Dr. King leave town. Stand up for what's right for everybody. And I mean everybody. Because people got angry when people stood up for women's rights, as Don talked about today. People got angry when some of us say gays should have their rights. Some preachers told me, you don't need to say that. I said, but you can't fight for nobody's rights unless you fight for everybody's rights. Everybody has the right. Even if it's something you may not participate in, you do not have the right to choose for other folk what they should have the right to decide for themselves. So the challenges are still there. The challenge that General Howard and others saw in the 19th century. The challenges that Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and others fought for in the 20th century. The fight that we are still involved in the 21st century. And that is why, with Clarence Rogers and the Howard Club of Southwest Florida, those that have put their minds into making sure that people can come along the path are depending on you to do. I remember one of the highlights of my life, George, was January before last. The president, Barack Obama, had invited us to be his guest on the stage at his second inauguration. Head of the NAACP at that time, Ben Jealous, and the head of the Urban League, Mark Morial, and I were sitting on the fourth row right behind where he would be sworn in. The only ones in front of us was the Supreme Court justices and the former presidents. And as I sat there and waited on that cold morning for him to be sworn in, finally Mrs. Obama got up with 2 Bibles. And a senator about 2 or 3 rows back said, Al, this is an awesome moment. I said, yes, it is. He says, to think we're watching this president being sworn in on the Bible of Abe Lincoln and the Bible of Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, I bet you never thought you'd ever see this moment. I told him, I said, no, but don't be confused. Those two Bibles are identical. Same amount of books, same amount of verses, same amount of chapters, same pages. But those two identical Bibles took two different routes to get here. President Lincoln's Bible was on the mantle in the White House. Heads of states and captains of industries and military leaders used to look at that Bible. But Dr. King's Bible didn't come that route. Dr. King's Bible came through the backwoods of Georgia and the bayous of Louisiana and the poor areas of Mississippi. If you look at the inside cover of Dr. King's Bible, you'll see a cell number. Because when he went to Birmingham, they checked his Bible in as property. And the bailiff put his cell number on it because he couldn't get the Bible till he was finished doing his time for fighting for our civil rights. But little did the bailiff know that when he was writing his cell number in that Bible one day would be on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, swearing in the President of the United States. That's why at the end, young people, I'll leave you with this. Life is about what you do that'll matter long after you're gone. I met Clarence's pastor here. One thing that a preacher doesn't like to admit, and Reverend Richardson pastors one of the largest churches in the country, but I will tell you a little inside trade story. The hardest job of a black preacher is to preach the funeral of an irrelevant Negro. That's a hard job. They roll the body down the aisle, lay it out in front of the altar. Family sitting up there slobbering and carrying on. And we supposed to get up and hallucinate a life for you you never lived. I mean, most folks shouldn't even have a funeral. Most folks should go straight from the morgue to the cemetery. Because there ain't nothing to say. Because everything they did was for them. Got them a nice house, your house will be on the market a week after you gone. Had them a nice car, we'll ride all up and down 95 in your car. The only thing that will matter 2 minutes after you die is what you done for more than yourself. Can some child say you taught them something? Can the neighborhood or community say you made a difference? Do as well as you can, but live beyond yourself so your life will matter more than just yourself. That's why we honor a guy like King, not to celebrate his wealth, but celebrate what he used his wealth for. That's why we remember Dr. King. I was flying one night with Martin III, his oldest son, and I said, you know, Martin, I know it's going to strike you funny. I said, but your daddy won. He said, won? I said, yeah. He said, what do you mean? I said, I know he was killed before his 40th birthday. I know he left a beautiful wife, widow. He never saw any of his 4 children, including you, grow up, didn't know if you went to college, didn't know if you married, didn't know if you ever had grandchildren. I said, but remember your mother used to show us pictures of him being dragged up the steps, the courthouse in Montgomery charged with income tax evasion? He said, yeah. I said, do you realize the second Monday every January that courthouse is closed? The judge can't come to work. The clerk got to stay home. Bailiff got to stay home to celebrate his birthday. Nobody celebrate the governor of Alabama's birthday, but the whole government closes down to celebrate the birthday of a black preacher from Georgia that never held office. If you stand for something, it'll stand longer than you can stand. That's why I tell you to live beyond just the realms of your own ambition. My mother, I conclude by this. My mother that I told you scrubbed floors for me. I think about when I was sitting there negotiating my show on MSNBC. And we went through back and forth, and the lawyers going through trying to squeeze the last bit or whatever was the proper thing to do in a negotiation. I asked the guy, the president, I said, what time is my show going to come on every night? He said, 6 o'clock. I said, good, let's go. We got in the elevator, the lawyer, Attorney Hardy said to me, why did you say 6 o'clock, good, let's go? I said, you don't understand. He said, what? I said, you got to remember all those years that they drew cartoons, caricatures of me and ridiculed me and told stories on me and told lies on me and then told some stuff that was true. But they said I'd never be nothing, never amount nowhere. I said, all them folk get off work about 5 o'clock. They get home by 5:30. They put their little dinner in the microwave up on the burner. About 5 to 6, they sit down and eat and ready to watch, and they take their little child surfer out and hit the button, and I'm sitting right there. The stone that the builder rejected. My mother raised me to believe if you're faithful over a few things, God will make you ruler over many. And it may not be easy, but if you hold on, God will make a way out of no way. And don't let others set your dream. You set your dream just between you and God. And if you're faithful, God will make your dreams come true. Because there are going to be things in your life. I tell my daughters this, you're in a technological age, but let me tell you, there are going to be things that you'll face in life that you're not going to be able to Google up the answer. There are going to be things that your laptop can't understand. But my mama taught me something. She said there's a part where you run out, and that's where faith comes in. Faith is when you can't figure it out. Faith is when it don't make sense. But faith is when you know that God will make a way anyhow. Faith is when you can't calculate the answer, but you know there is an answer. If you be faithful, that God will make a way. Faith is when the doctors give up, but you hold on for another doctor. Faith is when you have a pile of bills and no money, but you say he will provide all of my needs. Faith is when your friends walk out, when your loved ones won't call your name, when your family turn their back, but you say, I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me now. We come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in his holy word. He never, from the outhouse to the White House, he never failed me yet. Thank you and God bless.
Reverend Sharpton, I saw you try to go down them steps and leave, and all I can say is, nice try, but we got you. You can't leave here without us presenting this token of our appreciation for you being here today. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Rick. What I gotta get it. My man.
Okay. All right, okay.
Wasn't that wonderful? It was certainly worth coming to hear, and we thoroughly enjoyed our speakers, both our honoree and our speakers today. Thank you so much for being here. I do want to tell you that we have our speaker for next year as well. It's the new president of Howard, who was just inaugurated this month. Will be our speaker next year, March 19th. Put that in your PDFs now. We hope to see you then. Thank you so much for coming. But I want to ask the members of the Howard Club to please stand. These are your hosts for the afternoon. Members of the Howard Club. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, now, Howard graduates, all of you who were Howard graduates or attended Howard or passed through the school, please stand as well. Brad, you can stand because you are an honorary Howardite.
Stand up, Dale Stewart.
Okay, now for those of you who are not members of the Howard Club, I'm the treasurer and we'll receive your checks. Thank you. Now, just as a closing, in all of Howard's affairs, we close with the singing of Alma Mater. Those of you who don't know it, it's on the back of your program. Stands Ohio.
with Manatee Educational Television, and we have just had a outstanding speech given by the Reverend Al Sharpton. And I wanted to take a few minutes, Reverend Sharpton, to just follow up on some of the themes of your speech that you made today. First of all, you gave a stunning tribute to one of the co-honorees, Don King, and I just wanted to know what your relationship with him was and why he is so significant for you.
Well, I met Don King when I was in my late teens, when he was promoting the historic fight between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali in Africa. And James Brown, who was a big supporter of my civil rights work as a youth, sang at the preliminary festival. So that was how I met Don King. But I got to know him down through the years as a pioneering businessman, one of the few businessmen that actually controlled an industry, controlled boxing, and was very much supportive of civil rights. He helped save affirmative action. He put up money when we were about to lose a Supreme Court case. He's been a big supporter of mine down through the years as I formed National Action Network. But he supported the fights from generation to generation, and he and I have remained close. I preached his wife's funeral, but I consider him one of the unsung heroes of people that have made trailblazing efforts and never got all of the due they should have gotten.
I want to talk to you about some of the modern themes of your speech, including the fact that it was really of historical significance that you mentioned the fact that when Barack Obama was sworn in, I think for his second term, there were two Bibles, one by Martin Luther King and one by Abraham Lincoln. And I know that a lot of people had hopes when President Obama was sworn in the first time that we would be in a post-racial America. And it has seemed to a lot of observers that actually things have almost gotten worse in terms of race. And I just wanted to know what your comments were, and are you disappointed, and did you in fact think that we would get past some of the issues after he was elected?
I think that his election and his re-election was tremendous in terms of an achievement that many of us felt we would not see, in the fact that the nation had a first black president and couldn't have without a lot of white votes, millions of white votes. But I was never under the illusion that we were post-racial because the institutional setup of the country was still uneven. We were doubly unemployed. We were doubly infirmed in terms of, if you look at the index across the board, health, education, criminal justice. That can't happen just with one election. I think that the real historic significance of Barack Obama's election, yes, we elected a black man, but even as important, if you look at 8 years of Ronald Reagan, 4 years of Senior Bush, 8 years of triangulation under Clinton, and then another 8 years under Bush, you're dealing with 24 consecutive years of going another direction against addressing inequality. Obama turned that boat around. I didn't expect him to get us to shore, but just turning that boat around in the middle of a sea or an ocean that was going the wrong way is a tremendous achievement. History will say that he ended the racial neglect of the Reagan, Bush, and Clinton, who was kind of one way but then another way. And I think that he turned that boat around. The question is where we go from here. We see the explosions on the surface, Ferguson, Staten Island, Trayvon Martin. And in many ways, I think a lot of that is the backlash in reaction to a black in power. So I'm not disappointed because I never thought we were post-racial. And I am supportive of the president because he did turn it around. He is not, when Bill Clinton, let me give you this example. When Bill Clinton was president, a lot of us were upset we couldn't get him to deal with racial profiling. Amadou Diallo was killed in New York. He would not deal with racial profiling. He did the welfare reform bill, which I think hurt a lot of blacks, and he's admitted that. The omnibus crime bill, which put a lot of us in jail. You can't name one bill that Mr. Obama's done that has hurt us. Now, there's an argument of some that say, I wish he'd been more aggressive that would help. He's done nothing to hurt us. And clearly, the Affordable Care Act has disproportionately helped us. What he's done in terms of education and financial services has helped us. So I think that he's been a sea changer. But can I say that we are there? No. Can I say that we've made all the progress I would have loved to see? No. But going up against a headwind, he's done a tremendous job.
There seems to be a school of thought that many of the barriers that have occurred with this president is something that people don't want to talk about, and that is simply because of his race. And there are many people that poo-poo that argument. No, that's not it. It's his policies. And I know that America is very uncomfortable talking about race. But what part of the rejection by some of his initiatives by some people do you attribute to him just being an African-American president?
I think that to say that all of the opposition to him is based on race is an overstatement. I think to say that none of it is based on race is a lie. And I think that I'm not one to quickly call everyone that opposes him a racist, but I think for them to act like that some are not, including some in the Congress, is an absolute lie. Clearly, there is some policy differences. But when you're down to asking the president for his birth certificate, when you're down to screaming out in the middle of a State of the Union address, things that he's had to endure, no president has had to endure. And that is definitely, in my opinion, a racial element. And the fact that some did not see it as insulting and offensive to the American presidency, there's a lot of race involved. I would say a large portion of what he's had to endure has been based on race.
We've been celebrating some significant anniversaries, 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, 50th anniversary of the March on Selma, the March at Selma. When you look back historically, 50 years ago, and you see where we are now, does it give you optimism or are you disappointed?
I think that when I look at where we were 50 years ago and look now, it gives me optimism, but guarded optimism. Optimism in the sense 50 years ago, my mother was from Dothan, Alabama. I was raised in Brooklyn, New York. She couldn't vote in her hometown freely until she was 39 years old. To go from that to a black president shows me what we can gain. But guarded because we still have to struggle because they're trying to take back the Voting Rights Act, as I spoke about today, chip by chip. The Civil Rights Act, 64, 51 years ago, where we had legal barriers to public accommodations and legal barriers to things as simple as getting a cup of coffee. Well, today we can have events at the Hyatt in Sarasota, but we can't walk a kid through Sanford, Florida with Skittles and iced tea without him being killed and a jury saying, stand your ground is all right, as a theory. So I think that, yes, we've made progress, but we've not, in my opinion, gotten out of the danger zone. Malcolm X used to say, if a man sticks you with a knife and has 6 inches in your back, if you pull out 4 inches, that's progress, but you still got 2 inches of knife in your back.
And finally, as we conclude this talk with you, there are a lot of students that you addressed directly. The students that are watching this program were not here tonight, so if you could give a message to the young people, similar to the message that you gave inside earlier today, what would that message be to them, especially the African-American students who may have given up on some of their dreams and some of their goals based on some of the current events that are happening? What message do you have for them?
My message is that broadly we still have a struggle. And yes, it is unfair and unequal, but it is a struggle that people that had far less did far more with. We had, in my lifetime, no rights that people had to respect. They have to respect the rights now, and we've got to be able to fight. If you think about what your grandma had to fight, and she didn't make an excuse, you have no excuse. Second is that you have to set your sights high. Let your dreams be beyond your grasp. Don't go for what's easy. Dream beyond what you can grasp and struggle and stretch to get there. and be determined that nothing's going to stop you from achieving your dream. That's why Don King is important. That's why those that we hold up are examples. They went beyond what was even feasible or possible when they were born. Let your dreams be bigger than your circumstances. And thirdly, that you must have a commitment and a faith that if you do what's right, there are powers that I call faith in God. That's what's God in me, that will get behind you and bring you beyond where it is. There's no way when I was growing up a boy preacher in Brooklyn that I thought I'd run for president or have a national syndicated radio show or a national TV show. But I did what was right, and sometimes the forces of God will get behind you and push you the rest of the way. You know, they used to say when I was growing up in church, if you make one step, he'll make two. So I say to them that the struggle is hard, but it was harder. Second, set your sights high and gauge yourself, gauge your journey by where you're going. Must have a destination to have an arrival. I'm leaving here, Sarasota today, going to New York. I'm not getting off the plane until I land and arrive. If you don't have a destination in life, you'll never have an arrival. Know where you're going and make it a destination that may seem like it's hard to get to, but you know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, you'll never get there. And then have the faith to know that. When I get on the plane, I don't know nothing about flying, may not even know the pilots, but I have the faith that they'll get me there. Have the faith that God will get you where you're trying to arrive, but you have to know where your arrival is.
And finally, what's next for you and what's next for your organization? What initiatives are you going to be spearheading in the near future?
Well, National Action Network will be celebrating 25 years next year. We're going to spend this year fighting to preserve voting rights, to try to reestablish this Section 4 the Supreme Court took out. We're going to fight for Loretta Lynch to be confirmed as Attorney General. We're going to fight to maintain the ongoing movement around police reform because of what we helped to lead in Staten Island and Ferguson and other places, and economic interconnecting. When I say interconnecting, entrepreneurship with those that can go in the employment and the corporate ladder. Chairman of our board, Dr. W. Franklin Richardson, who was also at the luncheon, is very committed building black businesses, making sure we get the right contracts, expanding our media entities. When you look at the fact that we did a memorandum of understanding, National Action Network with NAACP and Urban League with Comcast and NBC, and made them provide 2 new TV stations. One is owned by Puffy Combs, Revolt, the other by Magic Johnson. Those stations came out of a direct negotiations Dr. Richardson and all of us did with Comcast. Those stations expand our ability to speak. You look at a Kathy Hughes owns over 50 radio stations and a TV station. We've got to have the ability to tell our story for ourselves. You can't do that without communications, and that's part of what we're committed to in the next year.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. Thank you for taking the time to speak with the citizens of Sarasota through Manatee Educational Television.
Thank you.
All right.